I'm Amelia Mosley and you're watching BTN. Welcome back for a whole new year of news. I hope you had the best holidays. Let's see what's coming up on today's show. We learn about the life and work of 2025's Australian of the Year. Welcome the year of the snake. And say hello to Australia's new pandas. All that soon, but first today, let's make sure you're up to speed on the latest news. There were a lot of big stories over the holidays, from a ceasefire in Gaza to a very short TikTok shutdown. Here's Jack to fill you in.
No, I had a great holiday. Well, look who decided to show up. Gotta go. One of my clones escaped again. I'm not a clone, I'm News Jack. Remember me? Oh yes, I remember you. Oh yeah? Well then tell me, what's been happening in the news? Okay, maybe I wasn't completely paying attention. I thought so. Yeah, it's been an incredibly eventful past 2 months. World leaders changed, there were massive natural disasters, and massive political upheavals. Like in Syria, where on the 8th of December, rebel forces took over the capital of Damascus, forcing out President Bashar al-Assad, who's ruled the country, often brutally, for 24 years. Meanwhile, in Gaza on January 15th, fighting finally came to an end after Israel and Hamas agreed on a ceasefire. While things are still tense, hostages and prisoners are being released and people are heading home.
We're very happy about the agreement. It gives us hope for Gaza's future.
Meanwhile, over in the US, there have been massive wildfires in California.
Please leave the area.
Thousands of people had to evacuate and many lost their homes.
This is crazy. There's a fire right outside.
All right, dude. Yeah, let's get out of here.
It's looking to be one of the most expensive natural disasters in US history and caused the destruction of a lot of famous landmarks. No, not that one. That's fake news. Speaking of which, Meta, the US company that owns Facebook and Instagram, got rid of its fact-checking program, which was used to, fact-check information people published on its platforms.
So we're gonna get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
Are you sure that happened? Let me fact-check you. Yes, it really happened. And the US got rid of TikTok. Really? Oh, well, for several hours at least. Yeah, you might remember last year the US gave TikTok 2 options. Either sell TikTok to a US company or face a ban from the 19th of January. TikTok didn't agree to being sold, so just before the ban date, it went offline for people in the US.
Goodbye, TikTok.
But it didn't last long. After 14 hours, it came back on, when former President Joe Biden said he wouldn't enforce a ban, and would instead leave the decision up to the new president, Donald Trump. Oh yeah, speaking of which, on the 20th of January, Donald Trump did indeed become the 47th president of the United States. And he wasted no time getting down to business. Oh, which I'm sure Ren will tell you all about in the next story.
Oh, well, better get to work then.
Gee, that's a lot. Luckily, nothing happened here. Well, about that. Why, what happened here? Here in Australia, we saw some pretty extreme heat waves throughout January. And in Victoria, massive fires burnt through more than 65,000 hectares of land, including parts of the Grampians National Park. Meanwhile, our politicians were out and about getting ready for this year's election. We also marked the 26th of January, aka Australia Day. And while for many it was a celebration, around the country others took to the streets to protest and reflect on the impact that the First Fleet's arrival had on Australia's First Nations people. There was also sport. A lot of sport. For starters, we won the Boxing Day test against India.
First double hundred by an Australian batsman.
Meanwhile, the Australian Open served up some action. Italy's Yannick Sinner took out the men's singles, and American Madison Keys took out the women's.
She's done it! Madison Keys is a major champion!
Oh, and we watched hundreds of cyclists take to the streets for the Tour Down Under. So there you go. You should be all caught up by now. Oh, gee, thanks. Hey, listen, will you hang around for the rest of the year and help me with all of this news stuff? Yeah, of course. After all, I am you, Jack.
Authorities in the US are investigating 2 deadly plane crashes that happened last week in Washington and Philadelphia. To find out the causes, they'll be looking at flight data recorders, which are also known as what? Orange boxes, red boxes, or black boxes? They're known as black boxes, even though they are orange, and they record what the plane and the pilots are doing, helping investigators to figure out what went wrong so it doesn't happen again. Do you know the name of the Chinese chatbot that was launched last week? Is it DeepSeek, Farsight, or Deep Dive? It's DeepSeek, and it promises to do all the same things as ChatGPT at a fraction of the cost, which had a big impact on the share price of big technology companies last week. Which of these New Zealand landmarks has been granted the same legal rights as a person? It's this one, Mount Taranaki, which is the second highest mountain on the North Island and seen as an ancestor of the local Māori people. It's actually the 3rd natural feature in New Zealand to be granted legal personhood, which means they'll have the same protections that people have. The French president has announced major renovations for the famous Louvre Museum, including a separate room for this famous painting. Do you know its name? It's the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. And which of these famous female artists won Album of the Year at this year's Grammys?
The Grammy goes to Cowboy Carter.
It was Beyonce. She's already the most awarded artist in Grammys history, including taking out this year's Best Country Album, but it's the first time she's won the night's top award. As Jack mentioned earlier, Donald Trump is back in the US White House, and he's been busy. Since becoming president, he's made or tried to make a whole heap of big changes that could affect a lot of people. Ren found out more.
Make America great again.
Donald Trump, go away!
It feels like Christmas Day.
There is anxiety, there is fear.
Lanai communities are under attack. What do we do?
Yep, he's back again. America's 45th and now 47th president, Donald J. Trump. And in the whole 2 weeks that he's been back in the top job, well, a lot has happened.
We're tracking down the illegal alien criminals, we're detaining them, and we are throwing them the hell out of our country.
Ending birthright citizenship. Mr. Trump pulled out from the Paris Climate Agreement.
President Trump also delivered on a campaign promise to withdraw the United States from the World Health Organization.
That's a big one, huh?
On his very first day back, Trump started signing executive orders, which are, orders that come directly from the president, which means no one else needs to approve them. They're not that unusual. In fact, almost every US president has signed a few, or a lot. But no one, at least in recent history, has signed quite this many on their first day. With the stroke of a texter, Donald Trump removed the US from the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Agreement. He pardoned the rioters who attacked the Capitol on the 6th of January. He renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, and put a pause on the TikTok ban that he tried to introduce in his first term.
We may be banning TikTok.
He also created a policy to recognise only 2 genders, banned federal employees from working from home, made it easier to fire federal employees, took away electric vehicle targets, declared a national border emergency and a national energy emergency, paused funding on a lot of government programs, international aid and immigration, and tried to end people's automatic right to citizenship if they were born in the US. And that's not all of them.
He has hit the ground running for this first week in office, and it has been very interesting for people in America to see.
This is Glenn. He might only be 16, but he's been reporting on US politics since he was 11. And he says some of the changes that Trump has made will have a huge impact. Although not all of these executive orders will actually become laws. They're not allowed to contradict the Constitution, and they can be challenged by courts, which is exactly what's happening right now.
So for example, when Trump tried to bring up the executive order about birthright citizenship and ending it for descendants of illegal immigrants, it was blocked by a federal judge who just saw it as blatantly unconstitutional. So, don't expect every single one of these executive orders to be passed or to come to light.
Trump's also been busy making some other changes, like bringing back his special Diet Coke button. Yep, that's a real thing. He's also launched a pair of meme coins with his wife Melania, which have already made a lot of money.
Come here, Elon!
And speaking of money, the world's richest man has been asked to lead a department dedicated to saving money. A lot of his supporters were happy to see the president working to fulfill his promises to save the country money and put America first. But others worried about the effect Trump's choices could have on America and the world.
And certainly, Donald Trump is, shaking up the system for better or for worse, but, it's exactly what they voted for, a shaking up of the system. The next 4 years are just going to be a very interesting time of political decisions that could have a drastic impact worldwide, even reaching to Australia. The world's going to change for better or for worse. But we'll see how it runs, and you want to definitely stay on top of what you're reading.
Next up, let's get to know this year's Australian of the Year. You might recognise Neale Daniher. And if you don't, you'll probably recognise his work, which has helped the fight against a devastating disease. Here's Sass.
And here we go.
3, 2, 1. Leighton Hewitt is down the slide and about to enter in the Adelaide Zoo jumper.
Celebrities slipping down icy slides.
I can guarantee never felt like that before.
And parades of blue beanies. They're sights you probably recognise. And they've become a big part of the AFL thanks to this man, Neale Daniher. Australia first came to know him as a mighty halfback flank for the Essendon Bombers.
Oh, beautiful kick by Daniher. That's a goal.
And he held his place in the spotlight as he went on to coach for the Melbourne Demons.
I see our young team as winners. You call it the beast.
But in 2013, Neale Daniher's life took an unexpected turn when he was diagnosed with MND. MND stands for motor neurone disease. It's a disease that destroys the motor nerve cells that connect with our muscles and allow our bodies to move around and do everything they need to do. It's progressive, which means it gets worse over time, and there's no cure for it. Every day, 2 Australians are diagnosed with MND, and their life expectancy is just over 2 years.
It's a beast of a disease because it's got 100% strike rate. There's no cure, there's no comeback story. My body will shut down over time.
So Neale Daniher decided to use his fame and the time he had left to raise awareness about MND and fight to find a cure.
I'm building a freeze army and we're coming after it. We're coming after it and we're going to find a treatment, we're going to find a cure.
In 2014, Neale Daniher co-founded the Fight MND Foundation, which raises money for medical research into finding treatments and ultimately a cure for MND.
3, 2, 1.
And they raise money in all sorts of ways. Like these blue beanies, which fill the G every year at the annual Big Freeze event, held at the King's Birthday match between Melbourne and Collingwood.
We're becoming a huge freeze army and together we'll fight MND and together we'll beat it. Thank you, everyone.
Liam Pickett, the Joker.
The whole country just comes together and rallies for him and so many families that are going through this.
Another fundraising tradition you may have heard of is Daniher's Drive, a car rally that raises MND awareness in regional Victoria. While his disease has progressed, Neale Daniher has defied the odds. And 12 years after his diagnosis, he's still making a difference and making himself heard.
Given I can no longer speak, I use my eyes to type and I have an app to speak. Hope you can hear me. Can you hear me down the back?
And now, Neale Daniher has been named the 2025 Australian of the Year.
Thank you. This recognition isn't just for me. It belongs to the entire MND community. Our vision is simple, a world without MND. Some may call it a dream, but I don't believe it's an impossible one.
The very first Australian of the Year award was given out in 1960 to Sir Macfarlane Burnet. What was his profession? Was he a politician, a sports person, or a scientist? He was a scientist, a virologist to be exact, which is someone who studies viruses. He's actually one of 2 Australians of the Year who went on to win a Nobel Prize. Right now, literally billions of people are celebrating the New Year. Lunar New Year, that is. It's a huge event that's marked all around the world, and we went to a Chinese language class where kids have been learning all about it. Check it out.
As we enter the year of the snake, may it bring with it transformation and growth.
Like the snake shedding its skin. If you're wondering what all this snake talk is about, well, it's to do with the Lunar New Year.
Lunar New Year, or Chinese New Year, is observed by more than 1.5 billion people, so yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
It's celebrated right around the world in countries like China, Vietnam, Singapore, Indonesia, and of course Australia.
You might be wondering why it's being celebrated now, when New Year's Day was more than a month ago.
Well, it's all to do with this, the moon.
You see, the calendar most of us follow is called a solar calendar,
which measures the year by how long the Earth takes to move around the sun.
But the lunar year follows the lunar calendar, which uses the phases of the moon to measure a year.
It means that every year, Lunar New Year happens on a different date.
This year it started on January 29th, which also marks the beginning of spring in the Northern Hemisphere.
People celebrate by having family gatherings and eating lots of yummy food.
Oh, and there's always a lot of red and loud noises.
It's all a part of a tradition to scare away an ancient monster named Nian,
who, according to Chinese legend, would appear at the end of winter.
This year you will also see a lot of snakes around.
That's because each Lunar New Year is named after one of the 12 animals of the Chinese zodiac.
Last year was the dragon, and this year it's the snake's turn.
Anyone born this year is thought to take on its characteristics.
The snake is intuitive, sensitive, funny, imaginative, wise, and passionate, which all sounds pretty good.
I'm actually a snake.
I was born in the year of the horse.
Lunar New Year celebrations will continue until the 12th of February.
So there's plenty of time to get involved and have a
Happy Lunar New Year!
Yeah, what they said.
Big shout from Australia.
Yep, there was a lot of shouting and cheering as Australia took out a historic Ashes series at the MCG. 16-0. They won all 3 one-dayers, T20s and the Test. Annabelle Sutherland and Beth Mooney both scored centuries during the Test, becoming the first women to be added to the MCG's Test century honour board. And speaking of history making,
There it might be. Bluey, here it is.
the Aussie men just recorded their biggest Test win over Sri Lanka by an innings and 242 runs, which also happens to be their biggest win in Asia. Usman Khawaja dominated with the bat, scoring his first double century, while Steve Smith became just the 4th Aussie to ever score 10,000 career runs.
Second place, it's still wild.
To Bathurst now, where Belgium team WRT BMW has won the 12-hour race. As the name suggests, the race goes for 12 hours, and it saw many tumbles, including this epic crash from Aussie Stephen Grove, who managed to walk away with minor injuries. And finally, Aussie snowboarder Josie Baff has come second in the snowboard cross in the latest leg of the World Cup in China, while British Charlotte Banks took first. It's Baff's 11th World Cup podium finish and puts her in a good position ahead of next February's Olympic Winter Games.
Finally today, to another big celebration, the arrival of Australia's new pandas. Xingqiu and Elan made their public debut over the holidays, and Ren went down to Adelaide Zoo to say hi.
They're rather large, exceptionally fluffy and painfully adorable. But don't let their cuteness distract you, okay? Because these... Sorry, what was I? Oh yeah, because these fluffy faces belong to two high-level diplomats. And today, it's my job to greet them on behalf of BTN.
Xingqiu and Elan. Oh, gosh, you're cute.
Today, we welcome two brand new pandas to the state of South Australia.
Yeah, we absolutely love them. Just like so awesome to see like pandas like right next to you.
Pandas have always been one of my favourites, and especially since they have new pandas, like that's really cool.
So these guys here, they're not like the rest of the animals you have in the zoo. There's a bit of politics behind them, right?
Yeah, our giant pandas are very special. They are on loan from China, and there's only about 50 to 60 giant pandas outside of China in beautiful zoos like this, so we're very lucky to have them.
You see, every panda in the world belongs to China, meaning every panda living somewhere else is on loan. China charges an annual fee of about $1 million, and they won't loan them out to just anyone. Being allowed to borrow a panda pair is a sign of friendship and respect, which is why it was a really big deal when in 2009, Australia welcomed its first pair of panda diplomats, Wang Wang and Funi. For 15 years, they brought tourists and smiles to Adelaide Zoo. But last year, their contract ended, and the Chinese government decided it was time for them to come home.
Yeah, we do miss Wang Wang and Funi. You know, they're everyone's first ever giant pandas, and so we have a very special connection to them. We always will.
But the good news was, new pandas were on their way. Yay! Although getting them here wasn't easy.
So the first part would be getting the animals used to their crates that they're going to fly in. We would give them bamboo, or we'd blow bubbles to them, one of their favourite scents, just making it a really positive place.
A keeper from China came with Xingqiu and Elan, while Wang Wang and Funi's Australian keeper kept them company during their trip to China, just to make sure they settled in okay.
Do you see very noticeable differences in the personalities between all of the pandas?
Yeah. So Xingqiu, as I said, he's slow and steady. He's very, he takes in his time investigating things, whereas Elan is very confident, and she was straight out investigating everything. When she goes out to habitat, she was straight up the tree, things like that.
And there's one other difference they're kinda hoping for. You see, Wang Wang and Funi famously didn't manage to have any babies, despite the zoo doing all they could to encourage them along. This time, they're hoping there'll be a little more romance between the pair.
We hope to have little pitter-patter of paws later down the track, but we do need to let these two adjust to moving to a new place. So keep your fingers crossed for us down the future, and we'll keep people updated as we know more.
Cross your fingers.
Cross our paws.
Well, that wraps up our very first episode of the year. We'll have more for you next week. And in the meantime, we've got all sorts of things to see and do on our website, including Newsbreak apps, and there's BTN High for you high schoolers. Have the best week, and I'll see you really soon. Bye.